So we're going to move on to the next session. Thank you so much. And the next session is a council of elders. Again, as we continue the crack. In African tradition, a lot of decision making, a lot of learning, a lot of spirit came from sitting with the council of elders. And our council of elders would usually sit under a tree, a huge tree, often a baobab tree. So I want us all to imagine a baobab tree. And I want us all to imagine going to sit under the baobab tree to listen to our council of elders as they guide us and talk about guiding Africa's wellness legacy into the future through ancestral wisdom. And this session will be held by different participants, and I'll call them on. Baba Mandaza, if you are there, you can also say hi. We also have Mkulu Lebohang Selo, Mama Tozi, Dalian Adolfo, Verona Spence Adolfo, and Michelle Saudan. So Lebohang Selo is a spiritual mentor and cultural guardian from South Africa. Tozi Teko is a systemic and family constellations facilitator. Mkhulu Mafavuka.
You may need to take off finger.
Sorry, yeah. The names are quite interesting. As you can see, Susie, we have very colorful names in Africa. So we have a holistic healer, metaphysicist. Baba Mandaza is a spirit medium and medicine man. Dalian Adolfo is an academic researcher and co-founder of the Ancestral Voices from the UK. Verona Spence Adolfo is a healer, filmmaker, co-founder of Ancestral Voices, also from the UK. And our moderator for this Council of Elders under the Baobab Tree will be Michelle Saudan, our esteemed Vice Chair of the African Wellness Initiative. So welcome, and if I didn't mention your country, please also, as you're speaking, introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, Leah. As we gather under this beautiful baobab tree, I am looking for my fellow elders amongst this many and huge panel. So if everyone could just bear with us in the moment as I locate my elders and bring them to the forefront. So please, thank you for your patience in ahead of time.
Perhaps we need to sound the African horn so they can hear, they can hear that we're under the tree.
Oh, wow. We say that, well, we all know that when the elders start to speak, time takes off its watch, right? So we will do our very best within the 90 minutes that we have to, bring everything full circle so that we can share with you enough to reflect and to carry forward. I feel very honored to be able to guide this powerful portal that brings together esteemed African elders to explore how ancestral wisdom and traditional healing can elevate today's African wellness industry while addressing some of the most common misconceptions and ensuring that Africa's living medicine and heritage are honored and preserved authentically. So without further ado, we'll begin. And I wanted to ask the elders, Wakuru, Wakulu, Tawazani, Wayete, thank you for being here today. We are so honored. Elders, and I'll start with Matozi, affectionately Matozi. As elders, what do you feel is being asked of us in this moment as we weave the fabric of the African wellness industry today?
Togozani, can you hear me?
We can.
Wonderful, wonderful. Togozani and Sanibonani, we see you as a collective in South Africa. We see beyond or more than the beings that are in front of our screen, of course. And this question and this greeting reminds us of the oneness of all of life. And as Dr. Boyo was saying, that we may not think, we should not be thinking that things are separate. The oneness of all life from the Nguni perspective, the perspective that I grew up from in terms of spirituality, is I am because you are, but not only as human beings, but the trees that allow me to breathe healthily, the animals that feed me and feed the vegetation of the world, the stars that shine, the sun that greets us every morning, all of it allows our well-being. And my intention today of speaking about a process called family constellations, I just want to introduce it by sharing that what it teaches us is that life has order. Life has order and balance. And what we are learning, even from these processes as we modernize them, when we reconnect to how our forefathers and foremothers observed the world, observed the universe, and aligned themselves to the harmony and balance of that, we are able to bring wellness and balance back into our life. And the moment of imbalance, a moment of dis-ease, is a moment of reflecting and coming back to self and say, what have I missed out on? What am I not honoring? What am I not acknowledging? Where have I separated myself from life? I don't know how much time I have, dear Michelle, and thank you for the space. Because we can go on and on, because these observations, these wisdom have no beginning or end. There's so many aspects I could hook from in helping us recognize and remember the oneness of all of life.
Thank you so much, Matozi. Thank you so much. We'll circle back to that. I'd just love to invite Dalian and Verona to share their wisdom on the same topic.
Okay, so thank you for putting this together. I must say this is a fantastic conversation and definitely necessary. And in terms of what I feel the ancestors want to let us know at this time is the fact of remembrance, that they've already had a wealth of wisdom surrounding our relationship, not with ourselves only, but with our ancestral heritage and with our environment. And as we're focused today's conversation about wellness, as Takosi said before us, our wellness is holistic. We don't separate. Everything is included. And the relationship that we have with nature is very key to the relationship we have with ourselves. Nature is calling us to heal and restore her. And as we do so, we heal and restore ourselves. And we do this by reconnecting, understanding that the wisdom already lies deep within us. By reconnecting to our ancestral knowledge, we are able to put the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together. Our wellness has become disjointed as we've adopted paradigms that are not intuitive or natural to our ways of being. So it is important and integral for not just ourselves, but the collective, the whole of humanity and the environment, that we return to ways where we acknowledge health as not just a single entity, but a multitude of all different facets that come together. So whether it's our mental well-being, our physical well-being, our understanding of utilizing herbs, plants, and all the minerals around us which aid our health. As we look at the world today and we see that the waters are being polluted, that is a reflection of the distortion that is taking place within. The fact that we would willingly hurt our own mother, our source of life, our source of nutrition, and everything that we need to survive. The fact that we are living out of alignment with that is testimony to say that we need to return to these ancestral ways. And within those ways, we find the blueprint of how to heal ourselves. We understand the beauty of understanding things, practices such as drumming, utilizing sound frequencies for healing, understanding that movement, dance, motion has always been an important integral role to shift energy around our body and allow us to connect to the spiritual realm. It's important for us to remember that we don't just stand here. I don't just stand here today as Verona. I also stand here as all the ancestors who came before me, who exist within me. And that knowledge is there for me to tap into. But as we live our lives in this Western paradigm and we ignore those internal voices, we ignore those internal calls, we become more distant from who we are. So this is a fantastic opportunity for us to reconnect. And I'm so grateful to be part of this conversation here today.
Thank you so much, Verona. Thank you. Powerful.
Thank you. Yes. And Michelle, please kindly, after listening to the beautiful wisdom already expressed, if you can kindly give me a reminder of the question again, specifically, so that I can make sure I'm also on tune and on track.
Absolutely. Elder, we ask, what do you feel is being asked of us in this moment as we weave the fabric of the wellness industry today?
I think for me, the essential point is to be proud of who we are and the traditions that we stand on. Because as Africans, I was writing a post the other day talking about the invisible people. We've been made invisible, even as the world depends so essentially on our knowledge, as foundational to, even if we want to call it, the very consciousness of knowledge of subject disciplines, what we might call today psychology, medicine, all these breakup of different compartmentalizations of existence. In our traditions, we live them, as our sisters have already said, as a complete wholeness. And where we now live in a space where everything is boxed up, how do you fit the circle in the box? And what it's telling us as Africans is we've been made to be so ashamed of these understandings from our ways. It's time to say, hey, we are here for the reason that it is enough. The fact that these traditions have faced such centuries of persecution and yet still sustain us, even if we don't recognize and respect it because our minds have been colonized a certain way, what it's telling us, the very only evidence we need is that we're still here, whereby even some species of human beings have gone extinct. There is power in our traditions. What we lack is the ability, or have been given the space, to be able to practice them and understand them in the fullness that we're supposed to. So the message is, let's stand in our Africanness and let's rediscover our Africanness in as fullest a way as we possibly can, without shame, without feeling that someone else needs to validate it, and by getting into it deeply in such a way that, because it is us, our tradition is a lived experience, it's a lived medicine, it's a lived consciousness. Really, there is no box in which we can place it. And as Verona said, it starts with yourself, because you are that living embodiment of the tradition. So I believe my message is, let's just stand and remember our Africanness as full as we can.
The river of wisdom runs deep here. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Elder. Thank you. I see Mkulu Umbete, Majodina, and Mkulu Lebohang are in the house. So I'll start off with Mkulu Umbete to share with us, in a few words. Welcome, Mkulu. We're so honored to have you here. Mkulu Lebohang, thank you for making it. Mkulu, what do you feel as an elder? What is being called in this moment? What is being asked of us as we weave the fabric of the African Wellness Summit?
Bayede, Thokozani. First things first, Michelle, thank you so much for the invite to share stage with knowledgeable elders in the space. I'm truly honored. On the socials, I go by Mkulu Ombete. I'm a Sangoma by trade, training, calling, beingness. Because having been in the space, elders, I greet you all. I greet you all, and I'm truly honored to be called an elder today. So where I would like to go in, taking obviously from my lived experience, having been a Sangoma this is my 20th year in the calling or in the path. And through all of these years, having trained initiates, having taken them through the process of coming to themselves or awakening to that which we would call or which would belong to the sphere that we call idlozi, So there's a lot to take off because from the perceptions that have been in times past, when it comes to especially this industry, fraternity, I don't know what to call it, because this is where the split even begins to happen, even for some of us, where this thing is a calling. And within the calling, this dimension or this space also has certain elements that are involved in that would even speak to a study of some sort, where, for example, we would say someone has certain psychic powers or particular psychic powers, for example. Beyond it just being a gifting in itself, but there's also an inner study towards it in terms of understanding the dynamics. And taken from that, we see how some of these understandings can help us, because I'm also here to learn. I am here to understand as well, because the question that you pose, what is asked from us, I feel like I'll be preaching to the choir, but my honored elders have truly articulated it in the sense that we come from the idea or the concept called Ubuntu. Now, Ubuntu, again, maybe in translation, would speak to a state of beingness, Botong Bahao. Who are you as a being? Who is the being, for example? So taking from that understanding and understanding then the human or the motu or the bundu or the muntu, the person would also have to understand then these other dynamics that make up who they are. you know. So what I'm trying to bring, without going too broad, I will apologize at some points, but without going too broad, I'm saying that within the fraternity of Ubungoma, we learn about the science of being. And when we look at it now, even today, we will see some of the modalities that are beginning to be initiated or that have seen the mainstream today. When we go back into this ancestral knowledge and we understand how we did some of these things that are innovations or technology, for example, how did we also practice, or how did we understand, or how did we come to the understanding or the science of understanding how these mechanics of the natural world work? Because again, the Sangoma is a scientist of the natural order or life, if I may put it like that. So in what my elders have said, it's remembering and also being able to extract the value that which our indigenous ways, our traditional ways, hold data, hold information that for a layman, we may just easily pass it on and say it's just a characteristic, but there are things that lay beyond those things that can speak to certain alignments that we may need as a people going forward, because we've been lost for so long. And yes, the question says, things have become fragmented. And I think it's because of how we are so spread across the world, and how then we will come to this understanding of umuntu, isintu, because these are some of the subject matters that we get into within the study of Ubungoma, because the fraternity or the institution in itself is a varsity, if I may put it like that. It is a school. There's dimensions and elements that speak to the human, or to us knowing who we are, in being able to us in allowing us then to chart a way forward. So in saying that, I would love to share obviously a bit more, because I know that I may be speaking to things and not being very clear, but I'm saying we are to remember who we are, how we have contributed to life, how we have contributed to civilizations, how we have contributed to all dimensions of life that we could think of, from the galactic space all the way to the earth, the soil that we live in, and the waters we interact, and the air that we take in, you know. So this holistic being called Umuntu is such a complex entity that I wish that as we go along, we may be able to just give each other leeways or parameters in how we align ourselves for the coming time. Bayede, Tozan.
Ngiyabonga mkhulu. Thank you, Mkhulu Umbete. We'll pose the same question to Mamkhulu Lebohang, who is right here in the corner of my screen. Mkhulu, in just a few words, what do you feel is being asked of us in this moment as we weave the fabric, of the African wellness industry?
In the name of our ancestors, in the name of those martyrs who left the legacy and left the footprint for us to step on and be able to push what they left behind from us. Secondly, I would like to apologize for reason being, I just arrived almost an hour or 1.5 hours ago from the spiritual journey. I just came from Mutuleng and other parts, so I'm still a little bit tired and exhausted. So in terms of can you repeat the question, please?
As elders, what do you feel is being asked in this moment as we weave the the fabric of the African wellness industry, Mkulu?
All they request from us is unity, love, protection, and the footprint that we're going to leave behind as we go on. Remember, as human beings, we don't die. We pass on and on and on and on. So we are regrouping today so that we can recollect ourselves and what I can say is and unlearn ourselves so that we can relearn ourselves as the children of Africa. Because of a lot of things have changed to us. Typical example, we live in Africa that was discovered by the system, that was taken out of Al-Kabilan and said, this is Africa that we discovered. They taught us to forget about identity, who we are as the children of Al-Kabilan, as the children who possess the blue blood, the real blood. We are here to reconnect again with the mother nature, with the mother earth, so that we can understand wherever we're going. For us to know where we're coming, we need to know where we're coming, to know where we're going, so that we can have the present. So without the future, there is no present. So that's how we are called today, so that we can connect ourselves, especially as they say, the elders. I'm just a humble boy that doesn't prefer the text. I'm just a child of the universe, the child of the nature. Remember, we are here to regroup and learn that as Africans, we don't compete. We grow together. So today we are coming together to grow but not compete.
Powerful, powerful. Thank you, Mkulu. Thank you. Wow. I'd love to open this up to specific pathways, specifically your pathways, elders, and we'll hold space for 10 minutes. As I mentioned earlier on, when the elders start to speak, time removes its watch. So we'll be conscious of the time as well. And to honor this segment, I will read a short piece of your bio so that everyone who has just recently joined can really connect with the wisdom that you individually carry. So I'll begin with Matozi. Matozi is a seasoned systemic and family constellations facilitator with over 15 years of experience and a life and career coach dedicated to personal growth, healing, and leadership. So Matozi, our question as students, as the youth, as the wellness industry, we ask you that with your work with the systemic and family constellations, it looks at hidden dynamics within families and communities, often revealing intergenerational patterns and wounds. So in the context of our theme, the cradle of wellness remembered, the remembering and the reclaiming of African ancestral healing wisdom, what can we learn from systemic and family constellations that will help us to understand what's been fragmented, and how can we rebuild a sense of belonging that's rooted in our traditions rather than borrowed models?
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, and thanks to the elders that spoke, and amazing relearning and remembering. I spoke about life having order, and that's the biggest thing that this tool called Family and Systemic Constellation has reminded us that our ancestors really attempted to stay in alignment with this order. And when you take the family as a microcosm of life, in constellation we've got a phrase that is orders of love. So order is key in helping us stay in harmony and in balance. And these orders of life remind us that everyone belongs and they belong equally. It's one of the principles. Everyone belongs. And when we look at nature, everything belongs and there's no competition, as Mkhulule would say. Life knows of its time and its evolutionary process. And we are here to remind ourselves of that. In terms of family and in systems and organizations, we belong and we belong equally. We also belong in our position. But here are times when we forget that everyone belongs. And when we begin to not acknowledge those that belong or forget about them, there's a disharmony that happens in the system. For an example, if a family lost a child, let's say at birth, or they had a miscarriage, or they had an abortion for whatever reason, sometimes that becomes so painful that they never talk about that particular being that was born in that family. And other children are born in the family or, the next generation, but those people that passed earlier are not mentioned. The system knows those people, those beings, as part of the system. And if they're not acknowledged, a sibling will take that energy one way or another. And that brings the imbalance. But there are also times when an aunt or an uncle, wanders off and never comes back or dies in another land and is never reclaimed. And those are the hidden dynamics that express themselves unconsciously in the system, and we wonder why we are not fully expressing or fully living in our well-being. So in family constellations processes, we then acknowledge those beings that might have been forgotten. And that's all we do, is to acknowledge the being or the beings. Someone who ended up in a mental institution, sometimes we are too embarrassed to speak about that kind of person. Somebody who ended up in prison, but an offspring will be born and have characteristics of that particular aunt, or is carrying, or is entangled. His energy or her energy is entangled with that long lost aunt or uncle. So belonging and belonging equally simply means that acknowledge everyone. They are part of us. Once and all, we belong. And when we do that, when we acknowledge, there's harmony and there's balance back in the system. They belong in the system. They are contributors in the system one way or another. The next thing that also reveals these hidden dynamics, it's when, there's an honoring of positions in the African ways of being. A firstborn in the system have their roles. The secondborn, the thirdborn, the lastborn have their roles. Now, when a child is born after somebody who had passed, and we act as if this child is a firstborn, we're actually getting that child entangled with the energy of the first one. So we can just acknowledge that, yes, there was somebody born before you, and maybe they didn't live long. You're the secondborn, but you're the eldest in the household. Yes, you are that, you're the whole eldest, but you're not the firstborn, not the secondborn. And if you are born between other people who have passed, that in itself is also acknowledged. So the acknowledgement and the knowing of the importance of that oneness and the belonging and the belonging equally brings harmony in the system. And when we talk intergenerationally, you know, we can get to the science of it, but also we know that we do take, we do share that the DNA. So the dynamics of what happens in a family reveals itself in this life of entanglement. When we take our parents' pain, when we take our great-grandparents' pain, because it's all in the subconscious mind, it's all in the system, this process. I also know that, you know, the gogos and the kulus in the system who work as sangomas, they also have practices of bringing those hidden dynamics into the fore and make practices, do practices of healing that. In the family constellation process, what happens is when something gets revealed as not your pain, but the pain of the previous generation or the pain of the other generation, we have a way of releasing that in the process, allowing you in the space to acknowledge and separate yourself from the pain that does not belong to you. And the ancestry is very happy to take away that which does not belong to you. So the fragmentation that has happened for many of us is, like many have said, we don't know, we have forgotten who we are, but also we live in a life that is too fast that we don't take the time to reflect and remember, who am I in the midst of the collective? And when we look into that, when we remember that and acknowledge that always behind you stand your parents, and behind your parents stand their own parents, and behind them stand their own parents, all the way back to source, we are aligning ourselves to that balance and harmony. And I will stop at that because I think my time